Yeah, it's good to have you. I know you're one of the best programmers on the planet.
Thank
But
you.
I'm trying to figure out how that came to be.
Well, you see.
Well, hold on a second. I guess my first question is, how did that come to be?
Okay. Yeah, I took an interest in programming when I was a kid. Um, a bunch of people around me were actual developers at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were basically encouraging me to, pick my career as we all were when we were
Wait.
kids.
So, like, well, how old are we talking here when you were a kid?
Um, probably when grade 7 or something. So I guess we were like 12 years old.
So, all your friends were programmers too?
No, but people around us, like family
Oh,
members and
family
stuff.
members and stuff.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
okay. So you
And
had
then
some
they got us
influence.
into video games. And then, as most people do, as soon as you see a video game, you play with it. You're like, oh. Some people think, actually, I kind of want to make a video
So
game.
you wanted to program a video game when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Did you ever program a video game?
The closest I got beyond just like these little, poker games or whatever.
Yeah.
I think I made a Sudoku one time. The closest I got was basically those StarCraft mini maps. That was like the
use
only
map settings.
yeah.
StarCraft 1.
Yeah.
How is that programming related, though?
In a way, it is because it has triggers, it has all of this stuff, so it kind of teaches you like conditional logic.
What was the StarCraft use map settings that you made?
What did I make? I think I made one of those like tower defense games or whatever, or just like one of these ones where you have to, go fast and there are little obstacles or whatever.
Yeah. I remember I made one with the Beast Wars.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Or Beasties.
Instant classic.
And then they're walking, and then they all end up in the same cage as Megatron.
Yeah.
And then the guy threw Cheater into the lake.
Yeah, so good. So, if I recall, there was no way to actually win that game. Man.
One guy actually did, but I didn't have a trigger for him to win.
How did he actually win?
So he's like, what happens now? And then one guy stayed, he's like, I'm still in the lake. So they didn't know what they were walking into.
That's great.
Literally.
Someone actually made it to the end. Yeah. That's so funny.
But then, so you went from grade 7, I have an interest in programming. Now you're in high school. How do you make this leap into programming officially?
So, I mean, I was lucky at the time. I was young and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. A lot of people go into university, they don't even know what they want to do, right? Which is pretty common these days. You're kind of pushed into it. But for me, I knew what I wanted to do all through high school. So I took all of the courses. I took every programming or networking course that was available at the high school. Even in grade 9, they had like an introduction to programming. It was the very first time they introduced this in the school.
Okay.
And I took it, and it was just like it was Turing. It was like a rudimentary programming language that really no one uses.
Yeah, I did that Turing one too.
Oh, you did?
The basics.
Yeah, it's very basic. And you needed a fun teacher.
I had to get our uncle to write my final test.
Right.
I wanted to make like a rocket, and he was like looking at me, he's like, your teacher's never going to believe you made this. I was like, just submit it. But the thing is...
Complicated game for that.
I think I got like 50 or something in that class. That was never for me.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay, so there's like thousands of computer languages. How do you even know if you're on the one that people need?
Yeah, good question. So you quickly realize once you get out into the real world that, and this is no knock to gaming developers, but that's not where the money is. So the money is actually for productivity tools, for things that help other businesses like tech-enabled businesses. And in those streams, the programming languages are very limited.
Okay.
There's only like Java. Java is constrained to like banks and stuff like that because they're on the old school stuff. In fact, there's even older school, but hopefully most of them have switched off. There's like Fortran and all this stuff that you don't even hear about. This was like in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And then it depends on which company umbrella tech stack you're under. So for example, Microsoft has a tech stack. So if you're going to a Microsoft workshop,
what's a stack?
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So a stack is basically a list of tools, languages, libraries that you will be using to complete whatever application you're making.
Okay.
So the stack would include some front-end language, some back-end language, some back-end database. Now it includes cloud. Which cloud provider are you using? Whether Amazon, Google, Microsoft
Okay.
Azure, right?
So then fast forward to Microsoft then. So Microsoft, you're going into Microsoft, or Microsoft asking you what's your tech stack, or they have the tech stack and you're asking them what's your tech stack?
You don't really communicate with Microsoft, but you go into a company and the company has already chosen a tech stack because usually these tools work very well together. So
Okay.
a perfect example is Microsoft has C Sharp, which is kind of just a spinoff of Java. So they have C Sharp, and you would use typically you would use Microsoft SQL Server. So that's their SQL Server
Okay.
implementation, right? And then they have a few other tools like you might use their so if you're using C Sharp, you would use their IDE, they call it, the Integrated Development Environment. You would use Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. So it all kind of goes together.
Okay.
So it's like
So
one package. That's why they call it a stack. Like you're using all of the package to develop.
so you have a company, or they have the company that you're applying to has a tech stack, and when they're hiring you as a developer, they're like, all right, this is our tech stack. Do you have the skills for it?
Exactly.
And how
Exactly.
do you know as a programmer, like you fresh out of university, or maybe you've been in the field for 10 years, you look at this job description and you're like, that's their tech stack. I better like learn how to do the following.
Right.
Okay.
That's exactly the way it goes. So like I go to like LinkedIn nowadays, and I see a job, and my first thought as an engineer, first of all, I want to look at what they're trying to do. Like, what is their main mission? What are they trying to accomplish? This is kind of like intermediate, senior level. Juniors kind of just like, oh, what programming language do they use? Eventually, you start caring less about that because you have a lot of experience. But now, what I look at is what is their mission? What are they trying to do? Am I interested in that potentially? I mean, what is the money? Where is it located? And then I look at the tech stack. Like, do I have the knowledge for this? So, like, I call it a Microsoft workshop. Like, do they have the C Sharp tech stack? Do they have like Java with Java Spring, all of this stuff? And these are like language with the framework. What are they using? And nowadays you keep up with the languages that are coming out that are like the new and the cool and the bleeding edge, right? So like they could have a Go stack, something like this, right? Um, yeah, all of these languages
Okay.
kind of go
Okay.
together. But I kind of look at it and I see, do I have this experience? Can I apply to this job, or can I learn it very quickly? Like
Yeah.
it's really not that hard to learn a new language. It's like very much the same patterns across these languages.
So what's popular right now
Mhm.
if you're applying to a company, or if you're getting asked from recruiters, what are they asking?
Good
Or what are
question.
they looking for?
So it depends on the industry. So if you're talking about like brand new bleeding edge, that would be Go. Go is a huge one. Python is the biggest, especially with the AI wave.
Seems like Python's been there forever.
Python has been. Google made it very popular because they implemented the Google search engine with Python.
Hmm.
A lot. And if you're talking about like engineers that are purists, they didn't like Python at all. They hated it when it came out, and they were wondering why Google is so behind it and all this stuff, right? But I mean, that's another story for another time. But basically, Python has survived, and it's the forerunner right now for the languages that you should probably learn if you're just entering the field,
Oh,
especially with all of the AI stuff. Like, that's where all
okay.
the money is. That's where you should be going.
So on any given week, sorry, okay, so you said that you listed those ones. So on any given week, are you studying throughout the week, or do you spend like one of the days of your week or month, and you're like, I should brush up on this language, and then what do? You just sit there and program with that language from a forum that people are talking about, or how do you keep your skills sharp?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so people do it in different ways. I know people that spend 30 minutes to an hour each day, kind of brushing up, keeping up with news, and or practicing on a side project. And usually these side projects are very small. It's like the smallest application you can build. It's just like a unit of work,
Okay.
like build a shopping cart
Yeah.
or something. And you might use a new language to build that shopping cart, right? You might even use a full stack, like a front end and a back end that you haven't tried, just to build out the shopping cart.
Hmm.
That's like a typical exercise. You might even see that in interviews, by the way. They might say, here's an assignment. I want to see what you can do. Like, prove to me that you can use this stack. It's less common nowadays because people have an open source that they can just copy or like whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's usually the way things go. Like, if you want to brush up, try like maybe like 30 minutes, an hour a day, if not like at the bare minimum a week, just to like keep up with everything.
Yeah, minimum week. Okay. So you are constantly studying.
Pretty much.
What happens if these developers don't keep up with this stuff? What happens though?
Uh, you could, well, you could obviously fall behind, but it depends on your job. Like if you're in a lifer job, like if you're not planning on moving around, which you technically should be planning on moving around every like 2 to 3 years, is the
For
meta of the
programmers?
world. Yeah, because that's really the way you get a big raise or whatever. Unless you're working for a great company. Great companies recognize talent and they'll give those raises, but it's
Mm.
very rare. Like it's very rare for a company to voluntarily give you a
Yeah.
30%
But a
raise.
contractor would obviously have to be stay sharp, right?
Yeah, yeah, because your contracts are typically, first of all, they won't renew you if you're not very good, but your contracts are 6 months to a year, sometimes 2 years, sometimes 3 years. If you're good and they like you and they need you,
Yeah.
they'll keep you around. But you should always be sharp to be able to get onto the new wave of contracts.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, like for instance, I mentioned Go. Go is a language I've used. I'm kind of familiar with it, but not. I wouldn't say I'm like expert level. If I were to just dive in right now, but it would only take me like a week or two to get to that level. So
Interesting.
just devote like a week of studying, and then I could pick up a Go contract probably.
What if you had to make a tier of developer types? Give me the from rookie to like this person's a pro. Like, how do you recognize that on a spectrum?
Yeah. So I mean, there's the obvious ones. Like you'll see this in LinkedIn for like we need a junior programmer, we need a intermediate, a senior. I would say that's pretty good. You could go into like a little bit deeper levels than that. Like there are upper intermediate that are like on the brink of senior, but they just haven't got that title, and you'll recognize them immediately. Like I've seen first year programmers that are considered juniors that are actually seniors. I worked with one very recently. I was like,
What is that based
this guy
on?
should get paid like 500K. Just their experience, their breadth of knowledge across the business. Because seniors are not just good programmers; they're usually good programmers, but they review their other team's code. They enable them to continue and progress, and they also understand the business and the scope of what they're trying to solve and how that affects the greater business. In fact, seniors are businesses depend on seniors to question sometimes the orders that they're given.
Yeah.
Because if you know about the business and you know that you've been given an assignment that is not going to work for the rest of the business, they want you to raise that as a flag. Like, tell me why that won't work. Okay. So that's like deep knowledge. Like you won't find a junior that will know a lot about a business.
So, what's your advice for someone who's at junior or mid? Like, how do you become a senior? And what if people are lying on their resumes or LinkedIn's about being a senior? What if they're just average? Like, how do you know?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is you can have 10 years of experience in the field and you'll be considered a senior. But I've seen people with 10 years of experience that are juniors. So like you will be considered a senior with years of experience, but trust me, you'll find those people and you'll think, "Oh man, how is this guy?"
So how do
senior?
you what do you consider yourself? Senior?
I'm definitely, I'm a senior.
You're definitely a senior.
Yeah.
This guy's touting his own horn. Okay, we already know you're the best in the world. So what is your snuff test in an interview? Like you just say you have a team and you're trying to make a team of all-stars, right? What's your shit test? Like how do you give them some of the program? Do you ask them a behavioral or some sort of like you should know this, or only a pro would know this question? Like how do you figure that out?
That's interesting. I'd say that's kind of tough to judge within like an interview cycle. You can figure it out based on questions that you ask, like technical questions. You can immediately root out the people who are not good engineers. And some people can become better engineers.
What is
by the
that?
way.
What is that? Like how do you like look or see or ask? Like what is it?
Typically you ask them a technical question.
Give it to me. Pretend I'm a senior dev.
Okay, yeah, but it would be something like develop a program that takes a list of words and rearranges them, for example. Oh. So like something like that. That's just like pure like low level technical. You should be able to do that, not with your eyes closed, but almost.
Yeah.
But the next step above that is something a little more complicated that can have various solutions, like maybe design. So this is a very common one. You do system design. So design Instagram. It's very broad. Honestly, someone would look at it and just be like, okay, give me more. But the thing is, you want to see what kind of questions they ask, how they assess issues, how do they deal with frustrations if you really want to grill someone, which I don't I don't really recommend, but like if you really want to know if someone's worth their value, you grill them hard and question every one of their decisions to see how they react under pressure, because that's going to happen
let's
in
try
the
it out
field.
here. Program Instagram. What do you reply to me?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my first question is, do you want me to program the front end or the back end or both?
Front end.
Okay, I'm doing the front end. So now I have to think about things. Do I have to think about things like likes and follows and posting and direct messages, or what do you want me to focus on?
Direct.
Because
messages.
remember, this is why I asked this. This is a very like short amount of time. This is like a 1 hour interview, right? So you have to really pick, as the interviewer, what you really want.
So that means as a pro, like if I'm interviewing you, you're also being like, this interviewer is a noob. Like if they don't even pose the question properly.
Not really. I mean, you're not like judging the interviewer, because they are giving you something to solve, and maybe they change their mind even like on the dime. Like they see you and maybe they assess you're good in one thing or another, and they might even change their mind on what you should be developing, right? So a lot of times you might come in and you say develop Instagram, and the person's like front end or back end, and you just say back end. They're like, oh, okay. Well, I thought you were going to go with front end or something, right? So like it depends, especially if you're a full stack developer, which means you do both front end and back end, right?
So quick question, what is front end, what is back end?
The front end it's as simple as it sounds. It's like just the UI, so the user interface, exactly. And you're using the tools that build up the user interface. And usually it's typically different languages, right? And you're not dealing with data as much. You're just dealing with the data that comes to you, and you're just showing that data.
And back end?
Back end is how you serve up the data. You're dealing with databases. You're dealing with cleaning data. Sometimes you're dealing with pipelines of data coming in from, say, another service or something like that. And what I mean by service is just like another backend server component that does a specific thing, right? You're also dealing with architecture, like what is a service? There's a user profile service. There's an Instagram post service. In the case of Instagram, for example, like you would have user posts. You would have maybe another service for distributing data, like maybe like a service that sends updated posts to people or something like this, right? Like there's different components. It really depends on your architecture.
Engineer seems a bit more complex than front, unless you're two different skill sets.
Typically, the backend engineer commands. First of all, it's harder. There's a larger barrier to entry because understanding data and how data is used is typically more difficult, and the interaction between services. Yeah, so the interaction between services is something that you have to know very intimately.
Yeah.
So it is harder. I would say the back end is typically tougher, but I say this, but the front end is very difficult. I'm not a creative person at all. I can't envision these things. I'm not the type of person to be like, this should be like this because this is a call to action to a user or whatever. Maybe I could learn it if I spent a lot of time, but it's a totally different skill set in the sense that you're still programming, but you have to know different parts of the domain.
Okay.
The backend is typically tougher because honestly, it's the data. The data is the tough part. You have to know databases very, very well.
And last question. So I'm a technical recruiter. Let's just say I post, I need a programmer, and that's all I put it.
Okay.
Do I need to specify the languages, the tech stack? The tech stack, right? I should specify the tech stack. And then canvas whoever messages me.
Right.
Or if I'm reaching out to, like if I need Go or whatever, you said Go and something else. Let's just say like an application like that. Should I specify like language, back end, front end, type of work that's going to be work? Like what should the call out be, and who should be like applying? Like what's the interaction there? Like how do you typically interact with a recruiter? Like do they have a typical question set for you, or like what is the interaction between you, a programmer, and a recruiter?
Yeah. So let's unpack that. There were a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
So when you're posting for an interview for a post, you want to know if it's front end or back end. You can post for full stack, but that's let's just say one company will only hire so many full stack employees.
Full stack is front end, back end.
Yeah. So they do everything, and that is the type of company that's either they don't have a large amount of resources to spend on a lot of people, so they just want one all-star, for example.
Yeah.
or someone that is like a jack of all trades that goes between these things. Usually, I don't see that often. I don't see full stack engineers being hired that often because it's harder to manage them in a way. But anyway, that's getting into a whole other thing. Let's just say, as a recruiter, you're typically going to want one or the other. Really, it depends on what your client needs. They'll tell you. They'll say, this is a back end or a front end job, and this is our stack. But as a programmer, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm a back end engineer primarily. So I would look for back end, what the stack is, what the purpose of the job is, right? And then really these days I'm looking for salary and also location, right? Like, where is this going to be a remote job? Can I do it from anywhere? Is this for US remote only or Canada remote only?
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, I think that covers it. So basically, I want to know the purpose of the application that they're building. It really tells me the type of job it's going to be, who the people are I'm going to be interacting with. And these are also questions I'm going to ask the recruiter. So actually, that goes into your second part of the question. What do you ask the recruiter? What do they give you and stuff like that? So I ask them, like, how is this job environment? What's the team I'm going to be dealing with? Like, I want to know how many people there are so that, either I'm learning from other people or all the work is not on me, for example.
So you're going to be training a team or something.
Yeah, I could be a team lead and I could be training an entire team. How many people are under me if I am the team lead? Or am I just part of a team and I have a team lead, etc. Right? Like, so there's a lot of questions that goes into the team and the environment of the company.
Yeah.
Next is the project, right? The type of project. Some people might even say this is the first thing you should ask about. Like, this is very important. You won't get engineers that don't like the product that they're working on, or like whatever purpose it is. It's not just about the money for a lot of these people. They want to know, they want to have something that they're doing that brings them fulfillment or enjoyment.
You programmers.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, I mean, now we're like in recession territory, so maybe they won't have that much. Yeah, they might not have that much of a choice. It's kind of been like a lower pool, especially with all the layoffs going on, unfortunately. But before, it's like, I don't want to wake up, go into the office and program something that I don't care about at all, right? It's just, there's no enjoyment. You're going to be very inefficient. Like, a lot of these programmers, they're going to take a week to do something they would normally do in a few hours. Like, that's how much the difference is.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy what purpose will do for you, right?
Yeah. There's so many developers out there, but like, finding the right one is probably a difficult task.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there are a lot of smart people though, and quite honestly, and I say the same thing for relationships as well. Like, as long as the person is open-minded to learning, as long as they're open-minded to learning, as long as they find enjoyment in the job, like they're actually excited. Honestly, I've worked with people that didn't know the language that I was working on. Like, they saw the stack, they said, "Oh, I haven't tried it, but I thought it was cool," and they turned out to be the best because they were excited and open-minded and just eager to learn, right? Like, as long as you have those are typically the main things. Because in general, they've been through the fire. Like, if they have an engineering degree, they've been through some crazy stuff in the college or university. The stuff that they put you through is just wild. Just the most disgusting assignments you've ever seen.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I think the passion you've had since you were young has contributed to your success.
Thank you.
Following your passion appears to be correct for people in the at least the developer route, in my opinion. Programming is important. I think maybe we'll see what this AI has an impact on programming. Maybe we'll get you on a second take on this. We're 2 years into this AI revolution. I mean, AI has been around for a while, but now developers are like, I don't know, is this coming from my job?
It's definitely a second episode.
Went from like the most sought after, but to the most now in danger. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, they can't make any of these products anyways without programmers in the first place. So
right.
Anyways, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming on my podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right. If you want to be a programmer, contact him or me. We'll get you a job.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, you're still here?
See you later. That's good.